Okay, so here we're going to cover the overconfidence bias, and this is Tali. Tali's helping us do this presentation. Oh, she's not happy about that. Okay, so overconfidence bias, it's the idea that people tend to be, you guessed it, overconfident. So I have this video clip here. I think this is from like Poirot, and this is a guy who he claims, I am right because I am right because I am always right. I don't know, you can watch the clip in there if you want. But here are some prominent events in history where we have examples of people being massively overconfident. So, the odds of a meltdown are 1 in 10,000 years. That is Mommy's phone, yes. This was said by the Minister of Power and Electric in Ukraine 2 months before the Chernobyl accident, and you can actually click on it to see about Chernobyl. It was kind of a big deal. You may have seen the HBO miniseries, if you're bored and want something else to watch. The Challenger, in reference to the Challenger explosion, they said before the shuttle exploded on its 25th mission, NASA officials estimated that there was one catastrophic failure in every 100,000 launches. Well, it only took until its 25th, right? So people tend to be massively overly optimistic about their ability to do things. Like, I'm over optimistic about my ability to record classes while being responsible for little kids. She's doing quite well right now, though. Okay. So lots of academic studies have looked at this. In this first one from 1977, people were asked about knowing with certainty. So they conducted a series of experiments in which they found that people were 65 to 70% confident of being right when they were actually correct only about 50% of the time. So this was about knowing with certainty how often people are wrong when they say they're certain, and it involved 528 paid volunteers. They said they were 100% certain that they were right 60 to 70% of the time, but they were only actually right about 50% of the time. You see Orly in there? Yeah. In the second paper, overconfidence depends partly on how confidence ratings are elicited. Yeah, that's the banana. And on what type of judgments are being made. So general knowledge seems to produce relatively high degree of confidence. So in this experiment, components of probability were included judgment and accuracy, and the subject assigned the probability of outcomes. So when we're talking about general knowledge, people tended to be much more confident than if you ask them about specific things. What? No? Okay. So in this next one, this was, I believe, actually from the American Marketing Association, or presented at one of their conferences. Get down. Okay. Forecasts are higher versus lower. For example, a 70% versus 30% chance of Team A winning a game. Consumers infer that the forecaster is more confident with their prediction, and therefore is conducted. Do not draw on the carpet. So in this case, it's all about how that information is presented. Since they said 30 showed that information before, they thought that, they do not eat a bobby pin, that they had conducted more in-depth analysis and were therefore more trustworthy, and you should believe in what they had said. Additional examples of this, the next paper examined the impact of previous decisions on new decisions, and he focused on people playing bridge. So, they calibrate confidence and overconfidence and expert players almost perfectly. He underlines the difference between accuracy, actually something that's carefully studied, and resolution, also called discrimination, or the availability to judge whether an event will take place or not. There's no agreement as to whether the two forms of expertise, or whether they are two forms of the same expertise, or, two different forms. So this is about the calibration of the probability of judgments. That's where we tend to have more of the problems. She's saying, where is Fish? Fish is the dog. Okay, now, the final paper investigated the impact of virtual certainty, where people are like, I am right. In this first series of experiments, subjects answered hundreds of general knowledge questions and then, estimated the probability that their answers were correct. The subjects tended to be only 70 to 85% correct when they reported being 100% certain of their answers, right? So, when I ask how many of you are good drivers, right, or how many of you are above average drivers, it's definitely going to be more than 50% of you that would report yourself to be above average drivers. Yes, that's Mommy's phone. Okay. So, examples in finance. How do we predict future inflation? Well, we're going to look at economic indicators, right? But how confident are we in that information? How confident are we in our forecasts? And yes, I see. So we rely on analysts for stocks, right? This plays into their payment schemes too. The more they can convince people that they are correct and that their predictions are going to be accurate, the more that they can get paid, right? How do you predict future stock prices and dividend payments? How do you determine whether or not a stock is overvalued? Okay, so here's examples. Estimates of future expected inflation were obtained from quantitative data generated by surveys. Yes, she would like you all to know that that's her sock. Yeah, it's your sock. You want to get your other one off? And they were asked whether they expected it to rise or fall or whatnot. And found in this last one, if stocks are overvalued, they provided direct evidence of weakness as well as the reasons for the weakness on popular, that's your sock, as well as quantifiable procedures in such a setting. So it's a question of doing our value judgments, right? Is our stock truly undervalued? Well, if it's truly undervalued and I'm really confident that it's undervalued, then I should definitely buy it because the stock price is going to go up. So we need to take these factors into consideration. Yeah. Hello. Say hello, students. Okay. Hopefully you get the idea. All right.